person in America is a black woman. Why? James?
Um, for a number of reasons, particularly um, for their being black, being a woman, being honest, being straightforward. Uh, they are honestly a threat to society because they are both the epitome of strength, but also the epitome of perseverance. So to have not only strength but also perseverance, time after time after time after time, over time, historically, um, even from Bible ages and before, you are at the point of unstoppable, unbreakable. It's even to the point where there's one lady, I forgot her name.
I'm sure about that.
Oh yeah. There's a woman who they tested her cells to find better ways to heal or to save lives. I forgot the lady's name. They actually did a movie on it.
Henrietta.
Yeah, Henrietta. There we go. The Henrietta cell. That's enough to identify that not only are they a threat, but also they are the epitome of greatness.
Wiggs, what can us as black men do to, further support, black women in their plight? I feel like, they need a lot of support as in, it's kind of like they're always working uphill backwards.
Yeah.
They're supporting black men in social injustice issues. They're leading, the wealth gap in black America. They're selling corporate levels. They're really killing it when it comes to life, but it seems like they still get a lot of slack. What can us as black men do to support them better?
Man, I think it's our responsibility to, obviously hold them down. I even think about some of the spaces I'm in, talk about technology, typically you're white male, and it has now gotten to the point to where they're actually listening to black people, right? Listening to black males, but I'm in conversations now where a black woman will make a point and it kind of just gets shuffled, and it's just like, nah. So the thing that I do intentionality wise is just like, yo, that was a really good point. Not just that, but it's just like bringing just that realness to it. Like what she is saying is good enough for us to have a conversation. I think that another thing is their perspective. James was talking about their voice. Women they just got this demeanor about them. You know, a black woman, when she walk in, she had that conversation, everybody, tightening up, especially an older woman. And I feel like just paying attention to that and giving them the respect and showing that. I think we talked about energy before. Like when you show that energy towards them, everybody else, like, okay, we got to respect this person. And I do that every single time in any table that I'm at.
Dr. Monet, what's your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. Oftentimes, to both of their points, we need to continue to support them in a manner that's reassuring and sincere. I even look back at my life and even, my relationship with my wife and our travel in this thing called life together. And I remember one time, even she had to check me years ago. Like, she was like, man, I feel like, you leave me dangling. I'm here pursuing my career and I'm fast track. But she's like playing, the backside. And I'm like, she had to wake me up that way. And it really, that moment, it just really clicked. And I felt like, damn, like I'm not supporting her the way I should. And that's within my home. So I was like, shoot, if I'm doing that here, how many times subconsciously in the field, maybe, a young student or a colleague in the field, she says something and maybe I'm not honing in on it. So now, man, like all of y'all, it's like oftentimes in various spaces you find that their points, their positions get overshadowed by a male, either black or white. So I'm like, nah, she made a valid point, or maybe, or this is important, or let's reevaluate how we're thinking to ensure that they're included in those spaces. And I think for women, historically, they are the queens of this earth. And as men, I think we've contributed, unfortunately, to not being supported.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing better now.
Yeah. Another point about that too, I feel like it wasn't until I put myself in those spaces where there were probably more women than men to really ask questions about the things that they need so I know how to support them. Like you can't naturally just know. We were just talking about relationships. Like I don't know what my wife needs sometimes. You got to communicate, and I feel like once you're intentional in doing that, it kind of helps. Hey, they need this. I'm able to do this, or I'm able to make this move, or they need this exposure, or whatever it may be. And I feel like you just got to continue to do that, and then share it with the next generation, or like your homie circle. Just like, yo, this is what we need to do. Women need this, and this is what we can provide. So.
Well, I think to further elaborate or further echo what you're saying, I think that there is a point in which we need to redefine the idea or the theory of submission. I think that over time, especially historically within the Black community, even in slavery, Black women submitted to the idea of that I have to work in the house, that my husband or the man that I bear children with will be removed from my home, or I have to separate from what I know, or I have to keep moving forward, and this is my life. I think over time, that type of submission has generated a idea or concept that you are not supposed to be who you want to be or what you want to be unless it is okay by the masses. And even in that same idea, in the idea of submitting to life or submitting to the circumstance, women have, particularly Black women, have lost the idea of what it means to stand on your own in a relationship, what it means to stand and be sure-footed in your ideas and what you want to say. So when you mentioned that a conversation needs to be had, or the acknowledgement of her feelings or thoughts or her perception of things, oftentimes a lot of Black women, because of the Black household or the Black idea, and I generalize that just simply because there are different concepts within that, but oftentimes we are lost in the idea that a woman is supposed to submit to a man. However, a man findeth a good man, he findeth favor. And because of that, those things that a man does is because of the favor of the woman. You get what I'm saying? So I think that it's very important, and I like that you stated that that there needs to be more communication and understanding of women in that aspect. But it's also a point in which we as men, we as the opposite sex, show not only equality, but also show appreciation of their leadership. We see so many times, I am speaking a lot, we see so many times the main focus is those men who have propelled the Black community. However, we get small doses of women who have done monumental, you know what I'm saying?
That's the paternalism, right? So historically, our society is a paternalistic society. And granted, that's not even our conception.
Right.
We were, from enslavement, that was manifested into us, so that we adopted that whole paternalistic practice that was supported through religion and culture and society. So many of us grew up, unfortunately, where we adored our mothers, I'm sure, or our aunts and everything else. In the back of our minds, we felt like we're still the man, we're the dominant one. So we had to rethink that process. I know I did, and it correlates into how I treat, how I engage with my wife now, or with my sister, or my colleagues, my peers, my friends. So we got to change that narrative of paternalism, right? Because paternalism says the man runs everything. We have a running joke in my house. Yeah, I'm the man of the house, but it's our house. We're a team. Exactly. My wife has equal say, just like I do. And I show that to my sons. To his point, like, because now I want my sons to realize, this is how you treat a woman. You uplift them. You support them.
I'm interject. So I think that let's be honest. We all know the women are, like, especially Black women, are the most disrespected women. I think men who are in certain situations and positions of power have to utilize their communication to uplift them. So I'm in a position right now where I get the honor to interview celebrities, millionaires, all these successful people. Made it a purpose that I spotlight Black women. One of the Black women that stands out to me that I interviewed was Jamil Mustafa, who's been labeled the next Oprah. She's an HBCU queen, interviews all these amazing people, but she says something that I think every brand, every company, every person watching this should really grasp. And she says, if we really are about that life and supporting Black women, put the bag on them.
Oh, yeah.
Now's the time to put the bag on them, because when you look at what's happening, let's be honest, white people have made money off our likeness. Mm-hmm. White women have made money off of talking like black women.
Mhm.
Yes, sis. Yes, boo. Yes, queen.
Mhm.
Let's be honest, where they got that from. And I think if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to be aware of. Also be aware of the African American verbs and what you're saying, how it can be looked at. So if we're really going to support and stop this disrespect of the black women, put the bag on.
You know, one thing I will say is that I believe black women are disrespected because of the lack of knowledge of where black women came from. And African history did not start with slavery.
That's right.
African history started 250 to 350,000 years before that, where black women were queens and ruled the world. And we saw an image of that in Black Panther, where you saw an image of black women having power, an image of black women controlling armies, an image of black women having more power than most of the black men in the movie itself. And that's how true African culture is. Whereas you see a black woman, you see a goddess.
That's right.
You see the first person that walked this earth. You see the person where all people come from, literally, of all shades, of all ethnicities, of all religions. You come from a black woman. And due to this heightened melanin, I believe that truth has been compressed and compressed and compressed over time to where people actually have psychological warfare within themselves to where they demise black women. They beat them down because of the truth that the power that these individuals hold. Their intellect is there, their look is there, their aura is there, the energy is there. Everything about a black woman is the epitome of mankind itself, right? And so I believe that the truth of knowing that information is the reason why on the other side of the coin we have this massive disrespect of such a beautiful being. And I believe that since we know that information and we have that knowledge, like what Sean said, put the bag on it. Give them positions, promote them, put them in promotion, and other positions other than the head of diversity and inclusion. Like put them in positions of VP, CEO, board positions, all these positions that they're well deserving of, right?
But there's still a threat.
Right.
I mean, there's still a threat, and I don't butt that as a contrary or to negate what you're saying, but there is a threat because not only is it important to uplift and to put these women or these particular individuals in a place of power, but it's important not just in power, it's important outside of power because what happens is what's going on now. That, you know, we've been asking for people to acknowledge Black lives. And now that they are acknowledging Black lives based off of one particular killing, we've been saying this forever. Mm-hmm. So now that everybody wants to be Black Lives Matter, Malcolm X said that you can grant me, what was it? Dang, my mind went blank right then. But he made a great point about how symbolism is going to be the move of the masses instead of equality, justice, money. You're not putting me as your equal, but you are pitying me. You get what I'm saying? So, yes, I would like for you to be in power, but there's a hard time or hard way that us Black men have to get past as well when it comes to Black women. And that's because marginalized were marginalized. And because of that, it's important that we ourselves dig into the root of our problem so that we can appreciate the root of a woman, and particularly Black women.
And I know you mentioned Malcolm X, and I have this quote here that says, the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. With that statement of Malcolm making this statement 40 years plus years from now, and how we're still dealing with that issue in 2020, I believe us as Black men have to really strategize on like what James was saying, it's not just about the corporate ladder, right? It's about taking care of home. It's about seeing an older woman crossing the street, you actually being a gentleman and showing chivalry of helping her out, setting a good example in the house. What are some other ways that we can be creative into breaking this mold on the micro level, not just on the macro level of Black women being in corporate America? Because that's a pretty heightened stage. But what about these little girls out here that we can start instilling this type of information in?
Well, the one thing I often, and I focus on this a lot in my work, is that throughout popular culture, that narrative carries a lot of weight, and not only how it presents Black women but Black males, but we have to change. We have enough professional folks here and in our networks that we have to continue to work on changing those images and stereotypes that often are misrepresented or presented to the masses about black women, with over sexualizing and all that stuff. And as you stated with the Black Panther, that was a film that highlighted, showcased the greatness, the strength of black women. And you're absolutely correct. Indigenous populations, black women were the leaders. They were the warriors. And somehow, 200, 400, 500 years later, 600 years later, they're in this submissive, less deserving position because American society says so. So, we need to ensure that narrative, gets thrown out the window. We focus on this new narrative that historically has always been what they are. And I don't have daughters, but we all influence people in general. But it starts from, school age to ensure that these young little girls are seeing these great women, and then they can aspire to be great, like Michelle Obama.
Because Sean said he wants his daughter to be a beast. She already is one.
Absolutely.
Because it's innate.
Yeah.
She's born with it.
It's already done.
Right.
It's manifesting as we speak. And then the village will only reinforce that as she goes to grade school or college or whatever the case.
Just to add a little bit to that, and I think you'll appreciate this too, when you talk about the educational system, I feel like even black people, period, need to have some more relevance as far as like what we learned growing up in the elementary ages, right? Then there has to be this prominence on the black woman to really showcase how powerful she is. And I think when you get black boys, white girls, all this different races to really respect because it's being taught to me, then as I grow in the generation, that spreads to
because if the first thing you learn about a black woman is that she was a slave and she had to be submissive,
that's it.
So that you don't know. That's a psychological game, right? The deepest game is a psychological game. If you can control somebody psychologically, you can control anything that they do, believe, and receive, right? And so I believe, and that's the major point. That's why I made the statement about understanding black people prior to slavery. That's 400 years of 350,000 plus. That is less than 1%, right? And so I believe, like, as the conversation, just to sum things up, I believe the conversation and what we understand as black men is that we play an intricate role in driving this change, being leaders of this change, connecting and interlocking with black women to be a part of this change, but to show some effort, show some desire, and show some perseverance in making the change. And understanding that first we have to first acknowledge that black women are the most disrespected person in America, not the black man. And once we can believe that concept and reinforce that concept, we can then be empathetic and make change. So us as black men, we are in agreement that that's going to be our change, and that's what's going to be the main thing that pushes us to succeed.
Absolutely.